The Supreme Court has made a ruling that could lead the way for Donald Trump to change birthright citizenship. This has a lot of people concerned. We're going to talk about both sides of this and also the bigger picture. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
Good morning. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air because the Supreme Court has just released a potential landmark decision impacting the future of birthright citizenship in the U.S. The justices were asked to roll back nationwide injunctions against the president's attempt to redefine the 14th Amendment, which states that anyone born in the U.S. is automatically a U.S. citizen, regardless of their parents' citizenship status. It's been in place for more than 150 years. But now, in a 6-3 split, the conservative majority ruled that President Trump can move forward with implementing his birthright citizenship change, except for those who brought the case, the 22 states and a group of pregnant immigrant women who brought that case. So it's not directly getting at the 14th Amendment here, but this will have a nationwide impact. Let's go ahead and bring in our Devin Dwyer, ABC's senior.
Before he brings him in, yeah, this will have a nationwide impact because basically they're talking about changing or the definition of what it means to be a citizen in this country. Now, we saw this was brought up before, and in the past, federal judges have been able to come in and just block Donald Trump from making these types of executive orders. But the Supreme Court ruling is changing those things. And there's a number of different ways that some people are going to try to fight back doing this. It has been suggested or recommended that people do a class action lawsuit. I just want to explain to people that class action lawsuits don't happen overnight. Those things take time. And so just prepare yourself for that. Also, this raises the question as who is this going to apply to? Because I'm going to show you someone in particular that this new ruling would apply to, but I'm sure they're probably going to get a pass because of who they are. Also, we need to ask another question. Donald Trump has continued to say that the border is closed. If the border is closed, then you shouldn't have to worry about this issue, right? If the border is closed, you shouldn't have to worry about people that are here illegally having babies here, right? Come on, guys, we got to start thinking. You got to start opening up our minds here a little bit. But this would really change things. And I'm going to get into what the 14th Amendment actually says in just a second.
A Washington reporter who's been following the Supreme Court on this. Devin, it's not as straightforward as I think a lot of people were perhaps expecting or hoping to hear. So break down what this actually means.
Well, this was a big surprise, Whit, and this is coming from the youngest conservative justice on the Supreme Court, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, 6-3, as you said, in a big win for Donald Trump, saying he can move forward with that executive order that he issued on day one, changing the definition of citizenship in this country. Practically speaking, it means the president can, in the next 30 days, begin to develop guidelines for how he would implement that. It does not mean, however, Whit, that this executive order is free from future legal challenge. Legal cases in 3 different districts will continue on the merits. The Supreme Court, in oral argument in this matter, did signal that it was skeptical that it could stand up to legal muster. But at this point, the court is really weighing in on the ability of individual judges in districts around the country to block a president's action nationwide. And what Justice Barrett said today is that an individual federal court judge does not have that authority to broadly block a president. The judge, he or she, can block an individual while a case is being litigated. And in this case, that was upheld. So, this order, as it's implemented, cannot apply to those 22 states. It's going to be messy. It cannot apply to those particular pregnant women that are challenging this. But elsewhere in the country, and at the very least in the planning stages, the president can move forward. And that is a significant and surprising win for him.
It sure is.
Pause. Okay, I wanted you to hear what he just said there. Everybody pay close attention. So it would not apply to those 22 women that have already apparently been exempt. However, this ruling by the Supreme Court moving forward that a federal judge cannot block the president of the United States, this can apply to other rulings as well. So I want people to really get the big picture here. So this isn't just about birthright citizenship. And that's what I want everybody to understand, because let's remember the reason why Mahmoud Khalil was able to be freed from the detention center in Louisiana is because a judge, they came in and they said no. So if this is the case now, that a federal judge cannot come in and block these decisions, that can apply to anything. That can apply to free speech. You know, they're pushing back heavily on pro-Palestinian speech, whatever, anything. They're saying a federal judge cannot come in and block it. So I see a lot of people when they're talking about this on social media, they're focusing just on the birthright citizenship issue, but they're not looking at the big picture. Basically, that means that the president in no way, shape, or form can be stopped from making said decisions. So people need to be careful what you ask for. I will say that. Let's go on to this clip here.
That's a good one.
He issued over 20 executive orders, including one that sought to deny birthright citizenship to children born in the U.S. to people here illegally. A federal judge in Washington state issued a nationwide injunction blocking the president's order.
In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect, or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power.
There are 94 judicial districts across the country.
And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. These injunctions have blocked our policies, from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation.
So nationwide, that's the important part. That being said, this doesn't just apply to President Trump. This applies to any president going forward, unless the next president were to try to reverse this. But this applies to any president going forward. So keep that in mind, folks, because there are things that Republican presidents try to, push forward through executive order that you may be against. And there are things Democrat presidents try to push through via executive order that you may be against. So I want to be very clear about this. This is not just about Donald Trump. This applies to any president of the United States. Now, check this out. As you'll see, this has been done before with Democrat presidents as well. Federal judges coming in to block or delay. Bush had 6, Obama had 12, Trump had 64, Biden had 14, and then Trump again, so far 15.
Nationwide injunctions have become a problem for Republican and Democratic presidents, but Trump has received the most by far. A Harvard Law review from 2024 found that 93.6% of nationwide injunctions issued during Trump's first term and during the Biden administration were issued by judges appointed by a president of the opposing political party.
We can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis.
Some of those policies include dismantling the Department of Education and the U.S. Agency for International Development, freezing federal funding to sanctuary cities, suspending refugee resettlement in the U.S., and restricting taxpayer funding of gender-affirming care.
So just something to pay attention to. Now, I'm going to give you the other side of this as well, because again, on this show, I try to do my best at giving both perspectives, right? Who is this going to apply to? Would it apply to people that would fall under this new qualification for citizenship who are, I don't know, public figures? What about people who are politicians? And the reason why I asked that question is we can name quite a few, right? We can name quite a few. One of them being Elon Musk. Elon Musk has made it very clear he didn't come here legally. Are they going to apply this to him? Probably not. But someone who qualified under birthright citizenship was Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy was just running for president. He was supposed to be a part of Doge, but they kicked him to the curb. There were some disagreements there between him and Elon, and things just got crazy, right? But I just want to remind you, Vivek Ramaswamy would also fit under this new category. He would fit under if this goes forward, he technically would not be able to stay here. But I don't think they're going to apply this to him. This is where I'm coming from, folks. Listen to this.
I believe in being consistent about my policies where...
So your father is not a citizen of the United States?
He's not.
Okay. And your mother, when did your mom take the citizenship test? Was it before or after you were born?
After I was born.
Well. People forget. After he was born. So that means that Vivek Ramaswamy also benefited from birthright citizenship. Remember, Vivek's parents were here studying as college students. And that brings up another question. What about those who are here as college students that are part of a PhD program? PhD programs in the US can take from 5 to 7 years. A lot of times, some of these PhD students are married. What happens if they have a baby, which these things have happened? That's why I'm bringing this up. They have a baby, just like Vivek Ramaswamy's parents did. That means that their child would not automatically get citizenship in this country. So to my point, how would Vivek Ramaswamy be allowed to stay? And the only thing that I can think of is that they would say, well, we're not going back. It's not going to be retroactive. So if you're already here, then you're grandfathered in. But again, if you're already here and you're grandfathered in, and the border is closed, according to Donald Trump, who would this apply to? And then there's also the case of the future administration. The next administration, 2028, let's say if the Democrats won in 2028, they're probably going to try to roll this back. And then now you have this chaos. This is what we've been doing the past couple of years. Presidents implement something, the next president takes it away. Then they bring it back, they take it away, and they bring it back and take it away. And it creates a chaotic situation. So I want people to think about this from the bigger picture. Like, don't just look at this and say, oh, it's just birthright citizenship. Think about who this is really going to be applied to. Because I got a feeling, remember, he's running for governor. So think about that for a second.
After you were born. Okay.
After years of being in this, following the legal process of becoming a naturalized citizen, she followed it through the legal process. And
so you gained citizenship through birthright then?
Well, but you gained citizenship through birthright citizenship in that sense too, right? I mean, every American. So what I want to do is revive a vision of citizenship where every kid who enjoys.
I'm sorry, just to backtrack. So your father is not a citizen.
They came to this country legally. I believe in being consistent about my policies where...
So your father is not a citizen of the United States?
He's not.
Okay.
Well,
and your mother...
Well, like I said, we'll have to see, like, if this goes through, we'll have to wait and see who this does apply to. That's what I'm saying. Because I don't think it's going to apply to some of those who, let's just say they're public figures, they're higher up there on the radar. Then that brings us to the point of the 14th Amendment, which we've discussed on the show before. I want you to hear what Donald Trump said about that. And then there's something here that I'm going to correct. Listen to this.
We can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. Was meant for the babies of slaves.
He gets this somewhat right, and I'm going to tell you the vocabulary that needs to change there. This is the part that I think some liberals don't want to hear. And we're going to go through the timeline here. When we talk about the 14th Amendment, it was for free men, for freed men. And Donald Trump says the babies of slaves, but we'll get into the vocabulary here in just a second. But it was for freed men. And I think, I don't know, like maybe we need to go back through civics, maybe need to take a trip down history class again. I don't know. But for some reason, people are not saying this. People are just like, no, that's for everybody. no, the 14th Amendment wasn't for everybody. It specifically breaks that down. And I feel like all of a sudden people have just forgotten about what we learned in history class. We were taught about this in history, and I feel like people have forgotten about it. Let me let him finish, and I'll show you the vocabulary edit.
So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant. And they
Yeah, this is a big deal. And I assume more people are talking about this because this really could change everything when it comes to citizenship. Now, I do want to do a vocabulary correction here and shout out to Naheem, who's been on the show before. The 14th Amendment was not for the children of slaves, it was for freed persons. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order that freed all enslaved persons. Being that slavery itself was an unlawful and unconstitutional institution, that executive order held full power. The slaveholding states ignored this executive decree, and so Congress had to intervene. First, with the 13th Amendment, which barred this illegal practice. And I just want to add here, with the exception of prison labor. That's the exception for slavery in the United States is through prison labor under the 13th Amendment. Then the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and then the 14th Amendment in 1868. We must consistently correct this false narrative. So shout out to Naheem for this, for breaking this down, because I've said that before too, right? So I think, he comes out strong with this one. He even shows you, he brought up Chat GPT and how Chat GPT breaks this down as well. Even Chat GPT says the 14th Amendment was not written for children of slaves. It was written for freed persons, right? So he brings that up as well. And then he says here, quick correction, the Emancipation Proclamation was limited to the slave states. It was not a universal order. Nevertheless, it was largely ignored by those states. So again, we do have to make sure we have the proper vocabulary there. So shout out again to Naheem for doing that, because I've caught myself doing that too sometimes as well. But the other side of it, I want you to imagine something for a second so I can speak to this from personal experience. So because my family was military, I lived overseas and I lived in the States. I was born in the US. My sister was born overseas. My sister was born in Germany. My sister was not given birthright citizenship in Germany. That's not a thing. Now, she had an option. If she wanted to, she could apply for dual citizenship before she was 18 years old, but it's not automatically granted. And so the other point that people will bring up about this is they said, well, if an American is born in another country, like they don't automatically get birthright citizenship. So why do we have it like that here in the United States? So I want people to understand both sides of that. Now, how far back this is going, like, I don't know when they're going to start this. Like, if this happens, I don't know if they're going to start with, let's say it applies to people going forward, or if they're going to do retroactive. I don't know. But the problem I think that comes up when you say retroactive is people are going to ask how far back you're going to go, right? So I think what Donald Trump was saying in that speech is that one of the parents has to be a citizen. Some people have brought this up online. They said, well, Donald Trump, you would have to leave too. I don't think that's the case. When I looked up the information, I think at least one of his parents was a citizen at that point in time. So, I mean, obviously, he's not going to push forward something that's going to implement him, right? So just think about that for a second. But get ready, because things are happening, and this could be a game changer for citizenship in this country. And also, when we talk about executive orders, this can also be a game changer in regards to what the president can actually do. So something you need to ask yourself is, do you want the president to have that much power? Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.